AM, K292FQ Riverside, and K293CF Moreno Valley.
If you were listening last week, you can recall that Kim was here and she was talking about her life and being married to someone who was a addict, who was my cousin Danny Beckham. Also, the stuff that she went through, having her daughter and her son, having Ryan and Deanna, moving out of the state of California, Danny getting into some trouble out in Oregon and ending up in prison. And where we left off, Kim was just telling us about the loss of her child, Katie, and she was 9 months pregnant and getting ready to deliver, and because of a unusual freak thing that happened, Katie passed away, and I believe that's right where we were at. Welcome back, Kim.
Hi, Kim.
Thank you, guys. So to pick up where we did left off, I was in recovery. I was at home recuperating after my daughter passed for about 8 to 10 weeks. Something that was really phenomenal to me was my daughter passed away at the end of July, and around September, October, and this is before the law passed where you could relinquish your baby if you didn't want it at a firehouse or a hospital. So a couple months after my daughter passed, in the news there was 3 or 4 babies left in the dumpster at different random places in Southern California and stuff. And I just kept watching the news arguing with God, going, I wanted mine. You know, I didn't understand how these women could just throw theirs away. And I really, really struggled at that time, and I got really depressed. And my husband wasn't responding. He wasn't, back then it was $30 for a 30-minute phone call. So he only called once a month. And we were 1,000 miles apart because he was in Oregon and I was in Southern California. And so I really had to struggle through that period on my own. And I really honestly felt I was just crawling through it, trying to understand why my daughter had to pass.
Yeah, right.
So when I was able to, I started subbing again back at the school district where I had originally been working, and trying to get life back on track, giving my 2 kids a normal life. My sister and I shared a place. We shared her apartment, and of course it's a 1-bedroom, and the landlord said, you have to leave. So we went and found a duplex, and we just worked and just tried to keep things day to day and keep things normal and try to just get myself back on track. And then fast forward, if you remember last week, I told the social worker I would be here 1 year. And she was like, okay, honey.
Yep.
And I got on assistance on April 27th, 1997, and I got off assistance April 28th, 1998.
Right on.
That's when I went permanent at the school district. I got hired into the purchasing department, and I looked at my worker, and she goes, you said you were going to do that. And I said, yep. And it felt really good to have met that goal.
Yeah, that's awesome.
For myself, and I got back on a full-time position at the school district where I had medical for my children and myself, and a good job. And if anybody's ever worked for the school district, you get weekend and holidays and evenings with your kids, and that's what I wanted to be the best parent I could be while their dad was in prison. So Danny was in prison from February of 97 to Christmas 2002. And that whole time, we were only able to visit him one time because that's all I could afford, and I drove up there and took a week off, and we got permission to see him every day. And it was a nice visit, and the kids got to see him. But other than that, they talked to him once a month, and he sent cards and letters. And I know that he communicated with you, Michelle, all the time. And but then there were some times where he would call and just scream at me, yell at me, tell me I was a stupid F and B, and I better start answering the phone when he calls more often, and I better, just barking these things at me that I was like trying to be the best and obedient wife I could be, and
Right.
trying to get him to understand I was here keeping our lives together.
Right.
So then you maybe missed a call, and he's yelling at you because you missed his call. Is that what it was
Yes.
to do?
Right. While you're working and taking care of his kids and raising his kids and
if
doing the best you can.
Right.
Right, and I recall like you would send him cards like constantly. I think one time you sent him a card a day for like all the way up until Christmas, like for months, or all the way up till his birthday or something. I remember you're very faithful, very good at that kind of stuff. So how
Yes,
did this make you feel? What did this do to your self-esteem, I guess?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, how do you think this what did this do to your self-esteem?
Well, and that's it. It rocked it. It just, I was still, grieving that my child was gone, and I was trying to I always felt like when I got my footing, I would slip, almost like you're walking on a wet rock and you just slip. That's how I felt a lot of the time. And, even when he would call and I would try to be upbeat and he had good news, if he was in a mood, he would say I was bragging. Oh, you're bragging about your life. And Danny had a way of figuring out what your weakness is and then using it against you.
Yeah.
So for me, it was my weight, or he didn't, he told people my wife is so smart, but then he would say, oh, you're using your big words, or you're just being so smart. You're not so smart, or I remember one time he said, the only reason why you accepted my proposal was because you knew I was the only one. You knew that would be the only proposal you ever got.
Wow.
That's awful.
So verbal abuse, it's just as bad. I've looked back and I thought, God, I wish he would have just hit me. Just hit me and get it over with.
I've been there. I remember saying, I wish he would just hit me instead of all these things he's saying.
Yeah.
Those are like landmines.
I would sometimes I would make him hit me. I'd say certain things that I know he would hit me because once he did, then the emotional stuff would stop. So I get that. Yep.
Right. And a lot of times I could make light of it. And in our marriage, it was more the prison and afterwards, because in the other parts of the marriage, he would take shots at me, and he was critical of me and stuff. But I was just like, yeah, whatever. But not the constant every time I called or I get a letter that was just barraging me for whatever I did, and he'd get mad that I made a big deal out of holidays. Well, that's just how I was raised, and that's how I wanted to raise my kids, and he didn't have that, so he had to make fun of it, and he had to, berate it, and there were so many times I wanted to use his weaknesses against him, and I just couldn't do it. That just wasn't my mate.
That's not how you are.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have
but there's so many times I wanted to say something to it that I knew would hurt him, that I knew, and I was like, I can't do it. I can't.
Yeah.
And so he was there for 6 years, and I was just out here making it. I was just doing the best I could, and I'm telling you, just making it, because there was times all the bills were paid, but I had $10 for the month. School district, we got paid once a month, and so it's kind of feast at the first half of the month and famine at the second half. But my kids were fed. They had a roof. I had family around me. I had friends around me, and I was just doing the best I could.
And you chose a hard path. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, you're fine.
You chose a hard path in telling your kids where their dad was, and I admire that. But I know that you had some people who were negative towards you regarding that.
Oh yes, so people would say, "Don't tell your kids that their dad's in prison." I was like, "Okay, my kids aren't dumb, and what am I supposed to say that he's on vacation for 6 years? What?
Right.
Why? That doesn't make sense." No, I'm going to be honest with my children. And they knew from the beginning, Dad made a mistake. They didn't know exactly what happened. They didn't know all the details of the assault, but they knew Dad was in prison, and they got to visit him, and they got to talk to him, and that was the life. And I just didn't want to lie to my kids. And, it's funny because Ryan was about 8 or 9, and Danny called. We were it was a Saturday. Danny called, and Ryan gets on the phone with his dad, and I hear him going, "You lied. You lied to me." And I was like, "Uh-oh." And so I go in to listen to what Ryan's saying, and he said, "My friends, I found out there's no Santa, Dad. There's no Santa. And you and Mom lied. You said you and Mom would never lie to me, and here you are. You lied to me." And I was like, "Uh-oh." He was mad.
Right.
And so when I got on the phone, I said, "Are you okay?" And he goes, yeah, I didn't expect it to go that way." When your kids find out about Santa, he goes, "I didn't expect it." Yeah. So Ryan was like, "Did you lie to me about the Easter Bunny and the tooth fairy?" He was just laying it all out to Danny. And
Alyssa did the same thing when she was about 8. I think she found out about the Easter Bunny first, and then it just went from there. But then it was like, "Is Jesus real?" And I was like, "Yes, Jesus is real."
But he was mad. We lied to him, and so I couldn't have lied to him for 6 years that his dad. What was I supposed to say?
Right.
I just thought that's dumb.
Right.
If they were littler, I would get it, but they were old enough to understand.
Right. No.
Right.
I get it, and and I had to let them live their feelings and emotions, and it was hard for them to wrap their head around a little bit, but they got it.
Right. And there's no right and wrong answer in these kind of things anyway. You do what's
Right.
best for you and your family, and it's nobody else's business.
Yeah, I believe that's true.
Right, but a lot of people gave me a very hard time. I forgot to mention when Danny went to prison, probably about a month after he went to prison, this man calls me and he goes, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, so I'm going to help you with your divorce." And I said, "Excuse me?" I said, "I think you got the wrong number." He said, No, your grandmother gave me your number.
Oh my gosh.
And so I'm going to help you get with your divorce. And he starts, I said, "Stop." I said, "I am not looking to get a divorce. Thank you." Hung up, called my grandmother. And she goes, "Well, honey, it's just the perfect time for you to get away from him."
Yeah.
Well, she didn't like him. And so I was like, "Grandma, I said for better or worse, not for better or worse in case you go to jail."
Right.
I said, "I'm hanging in there, and I don't appreciate what you did to me, and don't ever do that again." And I didn't speak to her for a while.
Yeah, that's a huge decision for her to try to make for you.
Right? And then for her to think that she knew better than that. I'm the defiant child. I just don't go along with the flow. That's not me.
Right.
Yeah, I would never
So
really
that was
assume
kind
that
of a
somebody's
shocker.
to assume. I remember I had a friend whose boyfriend, when we were quite young, got involved in some kind of shooting, and she asked my opinion. But when she asked my opinion, it's one thing, you know what I mean? It's another thing to
Right.
just offer it. And at the time we were really young, and I was like, "Yeah, how long is he going to be in jail for?" And you're not married to him, so, But I mean, that's an individual choice, and I think it's
Right.
admirable that you stood by him.
It's not easy. That's the hardest decision that I think you
It was
could
very
have made.
selfless. It was
Yeah.
very selfless.
Well, and some people said to me, "I can't believe you're waiting for him." And I said, "I'm not waiting for the hot dog vendor. I'm not waiting for some guy down the street. I'm waiting for the man I married and the father of my 3 children."
That's right.
Right.
They really made it like I was just doing something unbelievable. And I'm like, "Are you kidding?
Right. Right.
No, this is what you do. I'm standing by him."
That's
Right.
And that's what I told him. I said, I said for better or worse, dude. So this is worse than cool. That's fine. And like I said, it was the best we could make it. But Danny was manic depressive and bipolar, and he had his mood swings and he had his anger, and it was lashed out on me.
Right.
If something happened in the prison, I got yelled at about it.
Mhm.
I got the lash for it, and I was like, "Okay, I'll just try to be better. I'll just try to do better." And that was my whole system, was try to be a better woman, wife, mother, and he'll straighten up. He'll catch on. He'll get on the right path.
Yeah.
And realizing after he died that that's not how things work.
Right.
No matter, I couldn't save him, and and that's what's heartbreaking, because I know I fought just as hard as I saw him fight.
Right.
Yeah.
So he came home Christmas 2002, and so he was supposed to be on parole for 3 years, and because we were all down here, Oregon allowed him to be released down here, but he had to be on parole down here. And so he came home Christmas '02, and I said, what are you going to do? And he said, I want to start a lawn service again. So in January of '03, we started a lawn service again, and he was flourishing, and he loved it. And, you know, he did landscaping and block walls and sprinkler systems. He loved all of it, did all of it. And that was fine, and he was making great money. And then about Christmas of '04, he said, I don't want to do this anymore. And we had done it almost 2 years. And I was like, okay, what are you going to do now? Well, he had it was a family friend. My husband, when he was young, was taught how to do scrap metal by his uncles, by Michelle's dad, by the uncles. And there was this guy he still owns it, a scrapyard in Riverside, and he was kind of like a father figure to my husband. He would, they would pop in and out of each other's lives the whole time we were married, and he was just always there for Danny. And Danny said, I'm going to go back and work at the scrapyard. And I said, okay, if that's what you want to do, cool. And like I said, my husband was always a salesman, always a hustler, always made money, never, he wouldn't lay around. He didn't idle well.
No, he didn't.
So in January.
He'd be up in the first thing in the morning, waking you up, telling you get up, jumping on your bed. That's how.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
Exactly. January of '05, he started working for the scrapyard, and I knew he was a hard worker, and I didn't, when I look back, like I said last week, when I look back, you go, oh, I see it. He was immediately working 80 hours a week.
Oh, wow.
For months. And I just thought, he's a hard worker. Brain didn't connect anything. Why would it? And to say that he didn't use in prison is a lie. I'm sure he did. That's, I know he did. But it was away from us, and it was away from the children, and I guess I just accepted it in my head. And then, so he's working at the scrapyard 80 hours a week, and I think it was that summer is the summer summer of '05, my son went to work with his dad. And he came home one day, and he goes, I don't want to go anymore. And I said, why? And he said, I think, Mom, they're all using drugs. And I was like, what? So, yeah, I think they're all using, Mom. They go out, they go out back, they do this. And I was like,
How
okay.
old was Ryan at this time?
He's 14.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So just about to enter high school.
Mm-hmm.
So then I confronted Danny. This is like June. School just got out for Ryan. This is like June. And I confronted Danny, and he admitted it. Yep, I've been using it. And I said, well, that makes sense for the 80 hours a week. And I guess I was just oblivious. Like I said, I'm so naive about this stuff. I even feel dumb today about it, that I just don't see the signs and pay attention. And so Danny said, you know what? I'm going to quit my job. And I said, okay. He said, that's the only way I'm going to get away from it. I'm going to quit my job. And I said, okay. Then the next thing I know, he starts using with somebody in the neighborhood. And he comes home and he says, hey, they offered me a job. And I was like, okay, because I'm already not cool with it, I can tell. They want to pay me $3,000 a week to run drugs.
Oh, God.
Oh, my God.
And that was the person in the neighborhood?
Uh-huh. And I said, that's not a good idea. He said, no, it'll be great. We're going to make all this
It'll
money.
It'll be great.
No, it won't. No, that's not a good idea. No, you're not going to do it. You want to do it, you can't stay here.
Right.
What? No. Children, no, not happening.
Yep.
So then he started disappearing for like 3 or 4 days at a time. And money started come up missing. So this is like July by now. And he would go off and gamble and go on drug binges, and then come home and sleep a day or two, go off and do it again. And now all this time I'm trying to maintain a 40-hour-a-week job, 2 children in school, and my sister's living with us to help. And he's gone 3 or 4 days he would call me from Morongo, hey, come down here and get me your room so I can sleep. Or he'd call me from Pachanga. He would call me from any of the local casinos, wherever he was at. Hey, send me money. Hey, give me money. So at this point, I am actually sleeping on my purse at night because I didn't know where to hide it in the house that he wouldn't try to find it.
My mom used to do that.
Yeah.
When I wasn't staying in the house, when I was using. I was
like, huh? Oh, yeah. Yeah, I did. Sorry. I was like, thinking, your dad never got in my purse. But And it dawned on me. You got in my purse. Or no, you never really did, but I had to hide it. Felt like I had to hide it. But go on, Kim. Sorry.
Well, and then I started slowly taking them off the credit cards. So we had a $10,000 American Express, and I kept getting these emails a couple days along where the balance was about $3,000. All of a sudden, it was $7,500.
Oh, geez.
And I called, and I got a really good customer service lady, and I just told her the truth. He's on a drug bench. He's running up the money. I don't know that I'm going to be able to pay this, blah, blah, blah. So she took him off. She immediately cut his card off.
Oh, awesome.
And a couple days later, he came home, and he goes, hey, this effing card isn't working. What'd you do?
I remember him being all excited about your credit, and I was so naive at the time that I remember him coming out of prison and just like coming over and talking about that. I remember him saying, "Oh, Kim has great credit," and blah blah blah. And I was like, "Oh, that's good." And I was like thinking, "Wonder why he's so excited about that." It just didn't dawn on me. Like, but go on.
Yes, exactly. So he said, "What'd you do?" And I said, "I took you off the card, babe. You took me off." I said, "Oh, now I'm babe."
Yeah.
Usually I was, the B word, not babe.
Right. Not the babe word.
So, not the babe word. And he was mad. He goes, "How dare you?" He goes, "That's not your right to do." I said, "You're out of control. We're bleeding. We're bleeding now.
Mm-hmm.
You've hit an artery, and I've got to stop you." So then, and again, randomly gone 3 days, 4 days, come home, sleep a couple days. This was happening June, July, August. And at one point, my daughter called me. At one point we were having this random conversation, and he said, "Oh, I was talking to so-and-so across the street about life insurance." He said, "You got life insurance?" And I said, "Yeah, through the school district." He said, "How much?" And I said, "I don't know, it's like $20,000. He's like, "Oh." I didn't think anything about that conversation the way he presented it to me. But Danny was really good at being manipulative.
Yeah.
So in August, my daughter called, my 12-year-old daughter, and said, "Dad's here, Mom. He's home." He'd been on a 3 or 4 day binge. And he says the house is being surrounded by the FBI, and they're hiding in the bushes, and they're going to break in. And he's telling me God told him he has to gamble. And now at this time I worked a mile from my house. And I said, "Deanna, I'm coming home now." And she said, "No, Mom, it's okay." I said, "I'm coming home now."
Mm-hmm.
And I took off. And when I got home, Deanna said, "It's okay, Mom. I talked him into laying down and going to sleep. He's calm now. It's okay." And I thought, oh, my God, my 12-year-old daughter is having to deal with her father.
Right.
Being hallucinating.
Right. Scary.
And she was so Deanna looks like me and acts like her father, so she knew exactly how to handle him. But she was cool as a cucumber about it. She goes, "Mom, it's okay. I got him to lay down." And I was like, this can't keep happening. Mm-hmm. This is wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Another night, a couple nights later, 3 or 4 nights later, he kept waking up the kids, yelling at them that they hid his pipe.
Oh, my gosh.
And they kept going, "No, Dad, we don't know what you're talking about, blah, blah, blah." Well, the third time he woke us up, I walked out in the garage because I thought, this has got to stop. We have school, we have work, and he's on a binge. Mm-hmm. So I walked out in the garage. When I walked out in the garage, it was trash. I mean, anything and everything was on the floor.
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, he goes, "What are you doing out here?" And I said, "What are you looking for?" And he explained it was a glass pipe. And I swear to you guys, I walked over to his workbench, I looked down, and there it was. And I turned around and I said, "This is what you're looking for?" And he said, "Yeah, you had it. I knew you
put
had
it there. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. And I said, yeah, Danny, I had it." And I put it in his hand, and I said, "And you better clean up this mess." And I went to bed. And I said, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
And it would make him mad because I wouldn't argue with him.
Yeah.
Because I was a stupid F and B, and I was doing all these things, and I was cutting him out of his kid's life. And I just go, "Yep, that's what I'm doing. You're absolutely right."
He couldn't get to you anymore. He didn't know how
to
handle it.
I was becoming cold and complacent.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
"Yep, you're absolutely right. Yep, I'm that manipulative. You're right."
Mm-hmm.
So one day, I was in bed, and I woke up to him on top of me, And just as he was putting the pillow over my face and his hands around my neck. And I was fighting, but I couldn't move because he had me pinned down.
He was big. He was a big guy.
Yeah, and he was a big guy. And I was fighting, and I thought, don't give up, Kim. Don't give up. And that's the last thing I remember doing. And I passed out. And he told me later that I was out for about 5 minutes. And when I woke up, I gasped for air, and I sat up. And he was sitting on the opposite side of the bed with his back to me. He was just sitting on the end of the bed. And he said, effing figures you wouldn't die.
Wow.
And I said, very calmly, you have to go. You can't stay here. And he said, GD, right, I got to go. And he stood up and walked out. And I thought back about that moment, and I thought, he didn't say, baby, are you okay? Baby, I'm so sorry. He didn't say anything. And something reminded me of the life insurance conversation.
Yep.
And I was like, yeah, I'm done. I'm done with you now.
Yep.
And this is about the end of August, September of 2005 this happened. And then he came home. He was gone for 4 or 5 days. He came home, and I heard him storm into the house, and I was in the bedroom. And he came in the bedroom, and he slammed the bedroom door, and he grabbed me and threw me up against the wall and started yelling at me. You're ruining my life. I should have never married you. I hate you. Just all the explicitives. And I just said, okay. I said, are you going to try to kill me again? And he said, he just kept saying, I hate you. Okay. Well, I was thinking, the kids never heard that, and Ryan explicitly said to me, oh, no, I heard when he threw you up against the wall, Mom. And he goes, and I hate that I was too little or too young to help you.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad he didn't try, because who knows? You don't know.
Right.
I mean, you really don't.
So then I'm at work, and I'm getting these emails from my bank saying, it was like 8 o'clock in the morning, $350 was taken out. Then 11, $350 was taken out. Then like 1. And so I called the bank. I said, can you cut his card off, please? And they said, no, his name was on the account. That's his money. I was like, he is literally depleting us. And I decided I'm going to go take the card from him. So he happened to be at Saboba Casino. And I remember calling you, Michelle, going, what do I do? He's losing his mind. I don't know. I'm just going to confront him. Good luck to me. And I think that was the time I told you, Michelle, if he keeps going, he's either going to die or he's going back to jail.
Yep. I remember that. But you didn't tell me he tried to kill you. I mean, that was like something that was so shameful.
I didn't tell anybody.
That you didn't tell anyone for years and years.
Yeah.
And when you told me, I hated him for a long time, and he had already passed, and I loved him to death, But, man, go on. Sorry.
But let me clarify something too. Danny would never say, "Hi, this is my cousin Michelle." He always said, "This is my sister Michelle." You were the one he was closest to. You were the one he loved the most. So he would always say, "This is my sister Michelle." He never clarified to people that you guys were truly cousins.
And he only showed that side of himself really to you. And then, of course, when he was drinking or whatever, he would take it out on, maybe his brother or individuals. But he had that in him, that anger, that was inside of him. But he had the other side. I mean, you've even many a times you've told me, there's the drug Danny and then there's my Danny, or there's two Dannys. And my dad was the same way. So I totally get it, but I could never wrap my head around him I'll never be able to wrap my head around that, ever. But go on.
Right. And he was just, and I knew that was the drug Danny that did that, because he was so cold, because my Danny would not talk to me that way, would not treat me that way, would not go through with that way. Mm-hmm. So I show up at Saboba, and I find him, and he's at the cash cage getting more money, and there's a girl standing next to him, and I'm like, who's this chick? And she's kind of side-eyeing me, and I'm staring at her. And Danny gets his money, and he goes and sits down at a slot machine. And she's standing behind him and puts her arms on his shoulder, and I was like, oh, here we go. Oh. So I walk up, and I don't say anything, but I'm standing to the side of him, and she says, who the F are you? And I said, I'm his wife. Who the F are you? And Danny stands up, grabs me by the elbow, and starts dragging me out of the casino. And as we're dragging out, she says behind us, honey, give me $100 before you go. And I said, give that chick any of our money. And he just kept dragging me out of the casino. I don't know how security didn't get involved because we were loud. I was yelling. He was dragging me.
Right.
We get out to the valet area, and he flips me around, and he gets in my face and says, if you don't leave me alone and stop coming for me, I'm going to take you out in the desert and cut your body up into little pieces, and your children will never have a mother. And I just looked at him, and I walked right past him to the truck, and I just went to my truck, and I left. Because I said, I'm not playing with this guy.
Yeah.
He's already tried to kill me once. I'm not playing with him. But like I said, my weight was one of my weaknesses that he would use against me, and my children.
Yep.
So he knew what to say to me to get me to leave him alone.
Right.
So he went on another 3 or 4 day binge. He calls me at 2:30 in the morning, and he goes, you're going to laugh. And I said, what do you want? He said, I lost my keys in my wallet. Bring me my spare keys. And I did. I started laughing. I said, that's hilarious. I said, but here's the deal. It's 2:30 in the morning. You want your wife to drive an hour and a half to Pechanga, bring you your spare keys. Yeah, and hurry up. Okay. So I get down there, and I walk up to him. He's sitting at a slot machine, and he said, go sit at the bar till I'm ready. Okay, because I'm an obedient wife. And I sit down, and the bartender says, you know that gentleman that you were talking to? And I said, yes. And he hands me a Coke, and I said, oh, I don't have any money. He said, it's on me. He goes, he's not a very nice man. And I was like, oh, great, fabulous. And this lady walks up to me, this waitress, and she said, do you know that man that you were talking to? And I said, yes. And she said, how do you know him? And I said, husband of 17 years, 3 kids. And she said, oh. And I said, why? And she said, well, I've been dating him for about a month. We've only had dinner. I'm so sorry I didn't know anything. And this is in September, so I'm pretty much getting done with the whole game. And I said, you know what? You can have him. And she said, no, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. So she walks over to him, says something to him, and walks away. About 5 minutes later, he gets up. He walks behind me, doesn't even stop, walks past me and goes, let's go. So I follow him out of the casino. As soon as we get out of the casino, he said, it effing figures you would mess things up, Tim. You're always messing my life up. And I took his keys, and I was aiming for the fountain, but I threw him on the grass. And I said, don't come home. And I went home. I got in the car, and I went home. And, looking back, my son said something to me, Mom, you should have left Dad like 8 different times. And he's right. I should have. And I can't explain why I hung in there. I loved him. I still love him.
Right.
And I still held out hope and grace and mercy that my Danny would come back to me.
Right.
So it's September 12th, 2005. I remember the exact date. And I'm in the garage folding laundry, moving, washer to dryer kind of stuff. He comes out and says, what the F are you doing out here? And I said, laundry. Can't you see? And he said, get in the house. Get away from me. Get out of here. And so I went, okay, whatever. And so I went in the house, and my sister and the kids were in the kitchen. And I said, stay out of the garage. Your dad's having a mood. I don't want you guys near him. And all of a sudden, I heard a screw gun, a drill. And I was like, what is that? So I go to open the garage door, and I can't open it, the door from the kitchen to the garage. And I thought, oh, no. He was barricading himself in the garage.
It's crazy.
So I went around on the outside, and my garage has a 2-car garage door on the front and then one single one on the back, so you could drive a car into my backyard. So I went to the single door, and I'm knocking on the door, and he's going, go away, F you, you're a B. He's yelling all this stuff, and I'm just constantly knocking. And so he finally opened the garage door, and he goes, you're not going to go away, are you? And I said, what are you doing? And he reeled up his fist, and he pulled it back, and he said, I'm about to knock you out. And I stood there going, you're not going to hit me. 17 years, you're not going to hit me. He goes, I'm going to hit you, Kim. And I said, no, you're not. And so he goes, yeah, I am. And I said, go ahead then. And then he put his arm down. He goes, I'm not going to hit you. And I said, no, but you are going to get out. You need to go. I said, I told you, marriage of two. We brought kids into this. This isn't happening anymore. We're done. And so then the kids were standing behind me at this point, and they're 12 and 14, and he's going, see, your mom's breaking up the family, guys. See, hope you're happy, Kim. You're breaking up our family. I said, yes, that's exactly what I'm doing. And I turned the kids around, and we walked back in the house. He gathered up all his stuff, and he drove to Michelle's brother's house, Jody, in Arizona. Jody called me, and he said, he's here. And I said, I know, I'm sorry. He goes, what do you want me to do with him? I said, I don't care. And I told Jody everything that had happened. And he's, okay, Kim, I'll take it from here. And I said, okay. And he was at your brother's house for about a week, and then he came home. He came home September 19th. And just the whole cycle starting again. So fast forward to September 28th, he calls me and says, I'm in Laughlin, get me a hotel room. I said, nope. And he said, what? And I said, you're going to take your truck, you're going to park in the middle of the parking lot. You know, if you've ever been to Laughlin, they have huge parking lots. Mm-hmm. So take your truck, park in the middle of the parking lot, crack your windows, and get some sleep. What? Well, I'm hungry. How much money you got? I got $10. You can find a burger for $10. So you're not gonna help me out? I said, no. I said, call me tomorrow. Get some sleep. Call me tomorrow. So on September 29th, he called me and he said, come get me. And I said, nope, I can't. And he said, you're not going to come get me? You're not going to help me out? I said, I can't. It's a Thursday. Your son has his first football games. I can't. I'm trying to keep it together here. You need to get it together there. And by this time, he had slept for like 16 hours. So I knew I was talking to my Danny. Mm-hmm. I knew he was sober at the moment, and I knew I could reason with him. So my son has his first high school football game. I go to it. He's super disappointed his dad's not there because he had promised, oh, I'm going to be there, son, don't worry. They win their football game. I get home. It's 6:15. The landline rings. The phone rings. My sister answers it. She comes in the bedroom and says, it's Danny. I said, hey. He goes, hey. He goes, I'm on my way home. I said, oh. And he goes, that's why I'm calling. He goes, I'm coming up to the agricultural center. If I go left, I go to Joe's house. If I go right, I come home. I said, what are you going to do? He said, what do you want me to do? I said, what do you want to do? He said, I want to come home. And I said, okay. And he goes, but I F things up, Kim. I F things up all the time. I said, you do. You absolutely do. But you fix them, too. He goes, I do, huh? I said, yeah, you try to fix them. And he goes, okay, I'm coming home. Will you wait up for me? And I said, yes. My son and I it's interesting because my son and I went to dinner to celebrate his game. And my son, at one point in dinner, goes, Mom, what time is it? And I go, what? He goes, what time? Mom, what time is it? He was, like, very insistent. And I go, it's 6:41, son. He goes, okay, cool. And so that's going to be significant in just a few minutes. I'll tell you why. So we go home. I'm waiting up for him. I expected him about 10:30. I fell asleep. We had a security door on our house, and it kept sticking. We kept meaning to put WD-40 on it. And I hear the door shaking, and so I go to the front door, and I'm standing there. Now, my front door is half wood and half glass, so I can see whoever's standing on my porch. And I'm looking at two police officers, and I'm going, oh, great, thinking he's been arrested, something's happened. So I opened the door, and they said, are you Kimberly Beckham? And I said, yes. They said, do you own a Ford F-150? I said, yes. What did he do? What, is he in the car? Is he arrested? Where is he? What? And they said, call this number. So I was like, fine. I was like, great. And then my head's going, okay, I got to figure out bail money. I got to figure out. And I sit down and I call, and it's a Barstow police sergeant. And he said, there was a car accident, Kim. Your truck was involved, and the occupant driving has passed away. And I said, maybe he was carjacked because he was out in Laughlin. He goes, okay. He goes, okay, maybe. At about that time, my son's sitting across from me in the dining room table, and my son starts yelling. He's 6 foot tall. He's got a goatee. He has 9 tattoos. He has dark hair. Just starts yelling his father's stats. And I'm just staring at my son, and the officer said, that's exactly who we have. That's the body we have, exactly what he is describing. So I shook my head no at my son. And from there, I called you, Michelle. I called your brother. I just started calling the family. By this time, it's like almost midnight, just trying to wrap my head around, okay, he's not coming home.
Yeah.
And from there, I have very vague memories from there. The next day, my dad was there. We all drove out to Arizona. Oh, so that night I called your brother, and I got the answering machine. And then I called back right away, and he answered the phone, your brother Jody. And they said, Danny, he's in an accident. Danny died, and he is at the hospital. And he goes, okay, baby. He goes, I'm going to call you right back. And I said, okay. And he called me, and he said, no, they already took him to the morgue, and I can't go see him until the morning. And I said, okay. He goes, but I'm going to be there as soon as they open. And I said, okay. And he called the next day and said, yeah, Kim, that's who they have. So then I headed out to Arizona to identify his body, to be with family, to understand. And I had to be at the accident site. And Michelle, you and Danny, your husband, Danny, at the time, was there with me. Yeah. And we just looked at the accident site and things, we were just trying to piece things together and understand what happened. And it's just, I kind of felt like I wasn't going to get all the details until I was there. And then we just cremated him and we buried him, and we kind of figured out what happened. And then I think the worst part for me was when we went to the tow yard, Michelle. You were with me.
Mm-hmm. I remember.
And I saw his truck and I dropped to my knees.
You collapsed. I remember you collapsed. Yeah.
I couldn't. They could, because they were saying, we don't even know if the airbag, because the truck caught on fire, so we don't even know if the airbag went off. We don't know. And I'm looking at the metal from the seats, and he had a diamond-plated toolbox on the back of his truck, and I knew that it was 2,000 degrees before that it's affected the diamond plate, and his toolbox was just twisted, and I was like, that's how hot it was. But when I saw his body, he just had a little bit of burn on his ear.
I remember.
So we ended up figuring out somebody pulled him out of that truck when it caught fire, and they just left him on the side of the road. And the other guy that he got in a car accident with survived. He lost his leg, but he did survive. He was a young guy. And then I got copies of the 911 phone calls, and they were talking about two cars were street racing, and the gentleman who called 911 had very broken English, so he had just a truck caught on fire, street, cars racing, and yeah, then we had to bury him. So I felt, he quit his job to try to get away from drugs, and before he died, we had even talked about moving to get out of that neighborhood. So I just kind of felt, in the end, God called him home, said, quit struggling, son, come home.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
Because I saw my Danny fighting, but the drug Danny was just vicious and horrible and angry. And, we would get in arguments and he'd say, I wish I was back in prison. And I'm like, who says that? Well, prison was structured for him, and he didn't have the stress and responsibility of a family and bills and
he didn't do well under
stress.
Yeah, that was one thing with him. I would see that he didn't do well at all under stress, and things stressed him out easily. He had a really horrible childhood. I mean,
he really did.
Horrible. Yeah, and I think that's where a lot of his anger came from. Not to justify, but I think that's where a lot of his explosive and rage came from. He was very teased. He was dyslexic. His father was not a great father, from what I hear. I wasn't there, but from what I hear, he had some
issues. And the stories that he would tell, and his brothers would tell the same stories. Not that I thought my husband was a liar, but his brothers are like, oh, no, exactly this, exactly that. And I was like, who does that to their children? Who?
Right.
It just, and again, not defending him. I have a friend who's a school psychologist, and she really helped me, and she would talk to me and stuff. And one day she said, Kim, you've got to quit defending his actions. And I said, I don't And I went home and told my daughter, I said, you know what Joe said today? She said, I defend your father. He's been gone like 5 years, and I still defend him. And my daughter goes, you do, Mom. You defend Dad all the time.
Yeah.
You defend even the bad behavior. And I was like, oh, man, do I?
Yeah.
But it was my wife's role. It's what I did, and I get it now, and I see it now.
I think when you're not raised around that, too, it's harder to know what to do with it. Like being around my dad and him being on drugs and having relatives that were on drugs and seeing the way my mother handled it. She never defended it. She never made excuses for him. I think that it was easier for me growing up to realize, especially with Alyssa, that I'm not going to put up with it. I'm not going to defend it. I'm not going to tolerate it, in certain ways.
Right.
I'm going to have hope, and I'm going to do certain things for her. And I understand you taking him back and trying to have hope and hold out hope and remembering who he was and loving him. I get that. But it was a little different for me in that I was able to see it and recognize it because my mom was like that with my dad. It was like, no, he doesn't get a pass,
Right. Right. And I shouldn't have. That's what my son said, you should have left him 8 different times, Mom. And he was right. I should have. And there was a point where I was afraid enough of him that this guy that he knew that didn't like Danny, I was working with him to get fake IDs, and I was just going to go pick a town somewhere in Nebraska or Oklahoma and take the kids and disappear, and was accepting that I was never going to speak to any of our family again for the safety of my children. And I was almost going through with it because I was like, this is the only way I'm going to get away from him. And it may seem extreme to some people, but I felt stuck. I felt lost. I didn't know what I was supposed to do.
And that's what it is. It's like when you said it's a cycle. It really is. It's like he tried to kill you. And for me, I really, when I hear you talk about it, it's hard to wrap my head around the fact that he tried to kill you. You said you were done, and then you went back to the casino, and then you went back. You know what I mean? It's hard to wrap my head around it, but at the same time, I remember my mom doing stuff like that with my dad. I did that with my ex. There were times where things were horrible. He didn't try to kill me, but there were things that were horrible that he did. And, I would try to push it back to the back of my mind, or I just forget about it. It would be like it never even happened.
Your leg open and
like when he broke my knee. I busted my knee pretty good. But yeah, I mean, it becomes a cycle. And we get used to it. It becomes the norm. It's like the first time I got smacked, the first time he smacked me, it was like shocking, and I left him. And
you get
it was
used
a lot
to
of drama.
It after enough time,
and
just putting up with it.
Yeah, and then you start
think
to
you're supposed to stay, and they're gonna get better, and you're gonna be
well,
able
and because
to fix
it does for a little while too, and that's deceiving too, because it's not like if you see a Lifetime movie, the person's getting beat all the time.
I feel like it's like Stockholm syndrome.
I don't know if that happens to people, but I've never experienced it in my life. My mom's
or
anyone I know where you're getting beat
every single day.
Yeah,
he would choke me every single day. It got to the point, my ex. Yeah, but that's not my story right now.
But Kim, tell us, how did you get over it? How are you doing now?
So I grieved for him for about 8 years, and then it was like January of 2014 or something. I grieved for him for about 8 years, and I literally felt physical, like this weight was lifted off my shoulder, and I said, I think I'm done grieving. I think I'm done crying. Okay. And I started focusing on myself. I started focusing on my eating. I was just diagnosed type 2 diabetes, and the doctor's like, you're going to have to go on insulin. And I said, oh, yeah, I don't do needles, so that can't happen. And so, yeah, she was like, oh, no, it's really you. I said, no, that's not cool. And so I went on this just taking care of me binge, and my kids were, one was already they were both out of high school by this time. And that was the thing. When Danny died, I said, I almost checked out. I was really like, you know what? I'm done. I can't do this. I'm tired. I just went this whole round with him, and he gets to check out. I was mad.
Yeah.
So he just gets to leave, and I get holding the bag as usual.
Yep.
And I wanted to check out, but if it wasn't for Ryan and Anna, that's what kept me from not taking my life. I was like, oh no, I am now responsible to raise 2 great human beings.
Right. And you did a great job.
And that's all I'm worried about. I didn't want to bring another man into the house. That wasn't my thing, If you remember back, I didn't want to get married.
Yep.
So I was like, I got to raise 2 great human beings. So once I did that, and then I started taking care of me, and I was 455 pounds when Danny died because food was my addiction and my comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I turned to. But in 2014, I lost 200 pounds, started taking care of myself, started eating better, doing better, exercising, doing things for me. And started paying attention to some of the trauma, and somebody goes, no, you were emotionally abused, you were verbally abused. And I didn't even realize it was that. Somebody had to tell me that's what happened to me. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was just, all I thought was I was fighting for my marriage. That's all I thought.
And you were talking to the counselor, right? The counselor from the school, right?
Yes, all the time. And she's the one that said, honey, you realize you're, and I was like, no. But even now, you know, it's still healing. It'll be 17 years this year since he's gone, and they're still healing. There's still triggers.
Yeah.
There's still things that I have to, but it's not things that are going to lay me out. You know, before it would just depress me and lay me out. Now I'm like, get over that. Yep, that was a memory. Get over that. Let's move on.
Yeah.
It can't hurt me. He can't hurt me. But there are times I'll have a memory and I'll go, F you, dude. F you.
Well, he's that voice in your head, right? You told me that the other day, right? He's your inner critic, right? We got 2 minutes to wrap up, and then we're going to ask you to come back. We'll plan that for a future time. I'm not sure what time, what date, but I want you to come back to talk about grief because you've been through a lot of grieving, and we can go into more detail with that.
Definitely. So I now help people. I encourage people. A friend of mine just recently went through the exact same thing I went through. She said, I asked my husband. He said he's not on drugs. I said, honey, he's on drugs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I appreciate that I'm there for people, and I appreciate when I watched Alyssa struggle. I talk about Alyssa all the time because people are like, I can't get out of this. I'm like, yes, you can.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
People
yes, you
have,
can.
and I know who has, exactly. And it's good that you can say, you know, to them with conviction, like you don't have to say like, hey, just leave him. You know, because a lot of people think, oh, just stop or just leave him.
Right.
Like you understand, like it's not that easy.
Yep.
No, it isn't, and especially when you've got children, and especially when there's a whole dynamic there, and you love this person.
That's right. Okay,
Yes.
1 minute. I got to wrap this up. We'll talk to you soon, Kim. We'll have you back on. We love you. You did a great job. We appreciate you.
I love you guys. Thank you so much for letting me tell my story.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank
you
you
were
for telling
great.
your story. Your story's out there. It's going to help people. We know it. And happy Easter, everyone. And thank you for listening to KCAA, the station that leaves no listener behind at 102.3 FM, 1050 AM, 106.5 FM. Have a great weekend.